Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Vijf Vragen, or 5 Questions as we would say in English. This is our new podcast featuring the people of the Netherlands' diplomatic network here in the U.S. We're talking with the diplomats and policy officers about the strong bonds between the United States and the Netherlands, as well as our diplomatic work here in the U.S. We'll focus on our cultural and economic ties that go back more than 400 years. And we'll talk about the collaborations between our two countries that make our relationship a partnership that works. I'm Jeff Allenack from the Embassy's Communications Office, and I'm here with Lieske Streefkerk-Arts, who is the Counselor for Infrastructure, Transportation, and Water Management here at the Embassy. Thank you for joining me today, Lieske.
Thanks, Jeff. Good to be here.
Good. Now let's jump right in with the first question. What's your background and how did you wind up at the Embassy?
Well, obviously I'm from the Netherlands. I grew up in a small city near Enkhuizen, which is a city on the lake, and it's got an old port, so that is where I learned to sail. And in my senior year of high school, my mother took me on vacation to New York, and that was really amazing. I had an incredible time, and that's when I decided to spend more time in the US. And I was able to do a high school exchange program, and I found a family in Rushville, Nebraska, small town in Nebraska. I lived with them for a year, and they sort of became my second family. So that's where my love for the US was born, and I have been traveling to the US ever since.
On a regular basis? Well, you're here now, so outside of here, but
yes.
Regularly?
Yes, I've been visiting the family. They watched my children be born. They came to the Netherlands for our weddings. So when I returned to the Netherlands after high school, I went to Twente University and I did a master's study in public administration. And after my graduation, I had a few short jobs in the area, but then I left for The Hague to work at the Ministry of Environment. And that's over 20 years ago, but I've never really left the ministry, although it has changed because today it's called the Ministry for Infrastructure and Water Management.
So the name of it changed?
Yes, and also the content. Now also, it covers both transportation and environment, and it doesn't cover climate anymore. That's gone to the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate. So yeah, my position has also changed somewhat. I've been working at climate when it was still part of the ministry on the COP6, when I was still a young trainee, but I've also been head of international shipping. I've worked for public transportation. I've worked at the inspectorate, all different parts of the ministry. So when this position came by, Counselor for Infrastructure and Water Management, I thought this is my job because it combines my love for the US and my knowledge and experience within the ministry. So it seemed to be the perfect combination.
Sounds like it couldn't have been better if you designed it yourself.
I know, so here I am.
I must say you're the first person who I've actually met who lived in Nebraska. I was going to say was from Nebraska, but you weren't there. But I find that interesting. I know it's in the middle of the country. It's pretty flat. What surprised you about Nebraska?
Oh, well, Nebraska, what I liked most about Nebraska was the open spaces. It's very broad.
Flat, like the Netherlands?
Flat, but it's also very dark, and the neighbors are far away, and you can see the stars at night, and it's very quiet and open. But there's not very much to see for tourists. I think the biggest tourist attraction is Carhenge, which is like a replica of Stonehenge with cars.
Carhenge?
Yes.
I'll have to look that up. I'm not familiar with it. Okay.
But it's close to South Dakota and with Mount Rushmore, and it's close to some of the other states, Wyoming.
You must feel fortunate to have been there.
Yeah, it's great.
What's an average workday look like for you?
Well, as you probably know, working at the embassy, there is no such thing as an average workday.
Yeah.
But what I do is always on topics of my ministry. So the main focus of my ministry is climate adaptation and water, smart and green mobility, and circular economy. So I do events and projects and meetings on all these topics. For example, recently a colleague and I went to Austin for a Think Bike workshop, which is a workshop where you help the city to develop their cycling infrastructure. And this was actually the 10th year we've been working together with Austin, so it was also a bit of a celebration.
Now, have you seen that it different, like the cycling infrastructure expand since you started?
Oh yes, it has massively expanded. Yes, it's really great to see. Yeah, a lot of change. Also a lot more new buildings because the city has grown so much.
Okay.
Yeah, but
so they're really taking to cycling.
Yes, and I'm really interested to go back in 10 more years to see what has happened. But that's one of the topics. But I also organized an event this fall about aviation, 30 Years of Open Skies, which is a collaboration between a Dutch aviation company and an American aviation company, KLM and Northwest. They were the very first to have an open skies agreement in the world, so that's really what started commercial cooperation between aviation.
So did that make the aviation flying easier between countries?
Yes, a lot easier, yes, because you can fly with United Airlines and British Airways, I think, KLM and Delta. They work together and they make it easier to fly within Europe, but also to the United States. So they combine their
So
routes.
flying between their two countries was a lot harder 40, 50 years ago than
Absolutely,
today.
yes. It's really expanded. And another example I would like to mention, but that doesn't happen every day, is the visit of our Queen this September. I was also...
She doesn't come over here every day?
No, I think the last time she was here was in 2015.
It was, yes.
And she was they were very eager to come back, but unfortunately the King couldn't make it because he was ill. But I think they really enjoyed being here, and it really got a lot of attention from the government, but also from a lot of private companies who joined. So that was an amazing visit to be a part of.
A lot of work goes behind the scenes of those visits.
Absolutely, yes. It was also a lot of work, yeah.
But it's also exciting because it does get a lot of attention.
Yes.
Well, you mentioned this already, the cycling. The Netherlands is known far and wide as a cycling nation. In fact, I've heard there are more bikes in the Netherlands than there are people. Is that right?
That is right.
What's your secret?
What is our secret?
So how many bikes are there in the Netherlands?
There are 23 million bikes, and there are 17.5 million people. So every person has at least more than one bike.
A bike and a third, maybe? I can't do that math that quickly.
Yeah, and the 23 million are out of 1 billion bicycles all around the world. So there's really a lot of bicycles in the Netherlands. What is our secret? Gee, that is a good question. I think it's important to know that it is not something we have always done. The Netherlands have worked very hard to become a cycling country.
It wasn't an accident.
It was not an accident, no. We were also a very car-oriented country, like many other countries around.
Like here in the States. Yeah.
Like here in the States. And I think the public demanded safer roads, less accidents, and that has transformed the country into the cycling country it is today. But it's something we still work on every day. It doesn't come by itself.
I tell you, I was surprised. I visited the Netherlands, shortly after I started working here back in 2012, and I was shocked at the number of bicycles I saw there. Not only at the Hague, we were in the Hague, so it must have been at the train station in the Hague.
Yeah.
The bike parking out there, I think there were more bikes there than I've seen in any bike shop here in the U.S.
Yes.
I couldn't believe it. I don't even know how you could find your bike.
Well, that is tricky sometimes.
I can imagine.
I sometimes have a colored bag around my saddle to be able to find it in a large parking.
Like a bright pink or something like that?
Exactly, yeah.
And even the bike paths, they're different. I remember stepping out of a cab when we arrived, and I was standing there just by the car in the middle of a path. I thought it was a sidewalk, and the driver didn't notice me, and then all of a sudden he didn't. He ran over to me and got me out of the bike path, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, he pulled you aside.
He pulled me aside. I guess I was standing in the middle of I think it was red, of a bike path. I mean, it wasn't a busy time, so there weren't other cyclists, so I guess I was in danger of being hit by a cyclist, or at least annoying the Dutch people for standing in their bike lane.
Well, it's great that you've been able to see it, because usually it takes a visit to be able to understand how much bicycles there actually are, and if there are that many bicycles, that you also need bicycle parking, like you also noticed. I actually took a group of American officials to the Netherlands this summer on a study tour on cycling or on urban mobility. And they were also amazed by the number of bicycles, the number of bicycle parkings, the beautiful bike lanes. It's an integrated system, and it works very well.
You can tell them about it, but until you see it, you don't believe
exactly,
it.
Because you're not able to imagine that many bicycles. And the cars we even have bicycle traffic jams in some cities, because there are so many bicycles that it's become a problem, and we need to figure out how to get the traffic going again.
Well, I'm sure that you'll be able to. One thing that I've seen, another big difference is, and I see this both here in the U.S. in my work here at the embassy. Whenever we talk about bikes or we have photos of bikes, it seems inevitably somebody asks, "Hey, where's the helmets?"
Yeah.
What's the difference? I mean, I don't see anybody in the Netherlands wearing helmets, and here in the States, they'd look at you like you were crazy if you weren't wearing a bicycle helmet. What's the difference?
Well, if I look at myself personally, I never wear a helmet in the Netherlands, and I do wear one here in the United States. And the difference is, it's several things. It's the infrastructure. I think in the Netherlands, the infrastructure is, at least it feels safer. There's more dedicated bike lanes, protected bike lanes, where you're not afraid to be hit by something, so it feels safer.
So a car wouldn't be on that. It's separate from the lanes.
Exactly. It's not allowed for cars to be on there. It's only for bicycles. And also not for pedestrians, by the way.
Yeah, well, that's why I was standing there, right? I was breaking the law maybe and didn't even realize it.
Just for the bicycles. And then the bicycles themselves are different as well. You're sit up straight, so you can see the road better and the people can see you better, or that's the way I feel. Then would you be on a mountain bike or on a race bike?
Sort of hunched over here in the States.
Right, exactly. And the third thing I think that's also important is that almost everybody who drives a car in the Netherlands is also a cyclist. Everybody also owns a bike and they also cycle. So they're much more accustomed to the bicycles. They're much more used to looking around their shoulder to see if there is a bicyclist. So here it sometimes feels like the cars are not paying attention, or they don't expect you.
They don't expect you.
Yeah, and that is really different in the Netherlands. So I think it's very wise to wear a helmet here in the US, and I think anybody who feels more comfortable with a helmet could also wear one in the Netherlands, but most people don't because they feel safe.
Now, is there also, if there's an accident between a cyclist and the car, is the first thought, well, it's the driver's fault? Or is there really or is it not as simple as saying that?
No, yeah, there's a point there. The driver is always partly responsible. Half of the financial responsibility is always for the driver, no matter whether it's his fault or not.
Is that right?
Yes, so that makes him more careful, of course. Yeah.
If I had to name one other field the Dutch are known for, water management floats immediately to the top. The Dutch are well known for their expertise in protecting lives and livelihoods, and you don't keep this expertise to yourself. Can you name 3 projects in the U.S. that the Dutch are involved in or have been involved in?
Sure. Well, you are right. This is a long-standing cooperation between the Netherlands and the U.S. on water management. In fact, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Dutch Rijkswaterstaat, which is the executive branch of the Netherlands, they've been working together for a long time. And they have a formal memorandum of understanding which was signed in 2004, so it really goes back a long time. But the first project we were really working together on must be New Orleans in 2005.
After Katrina.
After Hurricane Katrina hit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've all seen the pictures. It was really devastating.
It was. Yeah.
And there were about 1,800 casualties, which is a remarkable resemblance to the Dutch big flood of 1953, which also had around 1,800 casualties.
That was a big part for you all. That's where, if I'm
Exactly.
not mistaken, that's where you all said, okay, we need to...
That's where it started for the Netherlands. And I think that is also what triggered the Netherlands when we saw this big disaster happening in New Orleans. We thought, maybe we can help. So the Netherlands was very quick to send disaster relief and military aid right after Katrina's landfall in 2005. And Dutch companies and government assisted in dewatering New Orleans. And after that, we had the first version of what we call Dutch dialogues.
Dutch dialogues, yeah.
Which is a method or a workshop in which experts, both from the Netherlands and from the US, come together and they design solutions to prevent future flooding. And this started in Louisiana and was also the start of the projects in Louisiana. But this method has also been used in other states and in other cities. For example, a more recent example is in Charleston in South Carolina. Here we had Dutch dialogues in 2019, and we had 4 areas where we did an analysis and designs were made. And a more recent example is in New York, where the Big U is being designed.
The Big U?
Big U, which is the entire lower Manhattan U shape.
So like a big seawall that looks like a U from above.
Yeah, it's not all a seawall, it's different measures, but yeah, that is also part of a very large resilience project, and that of course became important after Hurricane Sandy.
That was devastating for
Yes.
Manhattan, yeah.
Yeah. And this one has already started, and there are some Dutch companies involved in that, Arcadis and One Architecture, and also American companies are involved.
So it's a real partnership between the 2 countries.
Exactly. So it's a very important topic to work together on.
Sounds like a good one. What will you need to accomplish before you consider your job done?
Well, I'm afraid I don't think my job will ever be done, because the work keeps going, and there's always going to be a need to work together between the Netherlands and the United States. Or I say need, but I mean also an opportunity. I think it will always be important. For me personally, I have another goal while I'm here. I'm trying to visit as many states of the U.S. as I can.
Where are you right now? How many have you seen?
We're around 35, I think.
35. So it'd be shorter for you to mention the states you haven't been to.
Yeah. I don't know them all by heart, but of course we need to go to Hawaii and Alaska. Those are the hard ones. Planning a trip to Alaska maybe this summer, so that would be great. And there's also some in the middle of the U.S. that I haven't visited yet, like Oklahoma and Kentucky, and I really want to see them as well. So that is my personal goal.
That's a good one. It could be a goal for many Americans as well. I think I could been to maybe 5 states. And most of them probably been around here in the Mid-Atlantic. Yeah,
well, you have such a beautiful country. It's really worthwhile to visit some of the other states as well.
Yeah, I should. Maybe someday.
Okay.
I have one more question for you. Are you an avid cyclist?
Well, I cycle, but I don't consider myself a cyclist. In the Netherlands, most people cycle, but more as a mode of transportation. It's not like a sports, but it's more of a way of getting somewhere.
Okay, and you mentioned the transition from the cars to the bicycle.
Yeah.
How did you choose the bicycle? Why not the unicycle? It seems like that could have been at least, you could fit more unicycles on these paths. You may not have the bike traffic. Why not a unicycle?
Yeah, that is a good question. I don't know if that was seriously considered.
No?
Probably takes more cycling lessons.
Probably. Is it harder then, I guess, to have training wheels on a unicycle than a bicycle, maybe?
I've never tried a unicycle, so I don't really know.
Yeah, me neither. No, I think I'll stick to the two cycles. Although my cycle is stuck in the basement with 3 others, so we don't bring it out much.
Oh, you have 3 though. That's very good.
3 or 4, but admittedly 2 of them were from my kids from younger, so they're probably too small for anybody to ride. But I'm sure all the tires are flat now, and they're just kind of leaning up against the wall there.
Yeah, it's interesting that in the U.S. many children cycle, but then when the people become older, they stop cycling, and I wonder why. Because it's such a nice way to move.
Yeah, the one thing I can think of is that here it seems to be more recreation than commuting,
right.
Driving to work. I couldn't imagine driving. Our weather varies so much here in the DC area, between humidity that you can practically slice with a knife to cold that is so bitter that you don't want to be outside more than 5 minutes. And the commuting, you like to have a routine, and that would break it up. And certainly add to that the rain. I can't imagine riding a bike in the rain.
Right.
Although I saw that in the Netherlands too.
Yeah.
Press.
Well, I used to always cycle to work in the Netherlands, and every now and then, if it was really bad, like if it was raining when I left home, then I probably used the tram or another mode of transit. But if it wasn't raining when I left, I didn't mind so much, because if you get home, you can change, and also you wear a raincoat. I actually find the weather here in DC very nice.
Do you?
Yes. Only the 2 months in the summer are maybe a little bit too hot and too sticky. I agree with you there. But all the other months, I think you could easily cycle. Yeah.
We have had some mild winters recently. I remember a couple of winters, maybe more than a couple of many years ago. We had 2 blizzards back to back, 3 feet of snow one day, 3 feet the next day. Schools were closed for like 2 weeks. It was
well, that would make it hard to cycle.
That would make it really hard. And of course, it was the sidewalks. It took a month for them to clear, I think, up in my way. So yeah, that was really tough.
I think the Netherlands also gives more priority to cleaning the cycle paths if it has snowed, and it doesn't snow that much in the Netherlands either. I agree with you there. But it's also a matter of maintenance and also of good clothing.
Good clothing. I can't imagine cycling in a suit or a coat and tie. I mean, or even just a sports jacket.
I cycle in a dress with high heels.
You cycle in a dress. That's
well,
a true
in the
Dutch
Netherlands,
thing. Yeah, I don't know
because you don't want to go change after you arrived at the office. So you just cycle, and not as fast. You cycle slowly, so you don't end up all sweaty. And then you're all set to go.
Yeah. Well,
I think you need to come visit once more, Jack.
I do. Maybe bring my bike, or at least borrow somebody's when I'm over there. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you again, Lieske, for joining us for this episode of Vijf Vragen. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Please tell us what you think in the comments below, and be sure to click on the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode. or the other videos we post on our YouTube channel. I'll be back behind the microphone next month with another member of the Dutch Diplomatic Network in the United States. Until then, you can keep up with our work on any of our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Just search for NL in the USA, and you can stay up to date on how the United States and the Netherlands have a partnership that works.